before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride, and thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
Ignorance is bliss, which explains why a lot of us are so fucking happy. Quick to take the trip for all its trappings. Never one to ask what's up, what's going on, or God forbid what's happening. A lot of us would strap into the ride and then spit right in the eye of the guy whose job it is to snap your fastenings. But maybe we're all born with that capacity. Maybe each of us comes standard with humor, compassion, malice, and audacity. Some of us are blind to the system, but some see it fine and say this is how it has to be. Some of us can stare wide-eyed at a nationwide human catastrophe and only offer platitudes and recipes. And I wish that I could tell myself that nothing's worth obsessing past my everyday necessities. I wish that I could cry fake news over anything that threatened me, tune out our abuses and consume a little levity. Wish that I could offer up my son a smoother destiny. Wish I had some better lessons for how best to answer questions for the things I've been perpetually questioning. But I'm too busy looking at our leaders, wondering what I might be missing from their messaging. Trying to find the reasoning to let 250,000 people meet an early reckoning. And even though I know the truth, it's hard to swallow something that's so literally sickening. Hope is ever dwindling, COVID ever beckoning. Winter slows your breathing, but your pulse is ever quickening. Even though I know the truth, it's hard to keep listening. I'm done with my epiphany, my innocence is blistering. I'd like to think I'd taste the earth before I'd ever kiss the ring. Hard to speak the truth and harder still to keep listening.
Sometimes I think I miss being blind, when I couldn't read between the lines, and when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. Thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. Both bleed us so dry. Both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. They'll gladly pay you by the hour for a minute or so, so you can sign off on the towers where they'll piss on your home. And if you feel like you're just powerless to answer them no, it's 'cause you are. It's 'cause you are. They'll gladly stagnate a living wage, snap the chains, bury it.
Labor slaves in rusty cages dragged behind a chariot, led by Mr. Racial Jungle, Joseph R. Iscariot, fighting over scraps as they barrage us all with variants and BuzzFeed clickbait, straight until we're paralyzed, trying to distract us from the concentration camps that Joe had swore he'd close but only chose to amplify, where they got 50-something kids in cages made for 5 to occupy. And no, she hasn't seen the camps, but Harris swears they're paradise. She tells us the facilities are safe, and that right down to the women, they are regularly sterilized. Then she throws her head back and she proceeds to laugh, that sort of heartless cackle you'd expect from someone working steadfastly on behalf of the virus and a Congress full of parasites. And where was I? I was busy cashing every blue check, demonstrating plainly all the narratives expected from the verified. I was busy breeding verbal leeches by the terabyte. Train them to exsanguinate the wealthy while they sleep at night. Bleed the oil barons dry and barren. Say they showed us how to share and now we share alike. Tell them I contracted rabies from a feral mic. Now I'm just another species losing sleep to noise pollution and these glaring lights. Forced to change its habits and adapt to just survive. But now it's safe to say that some of us are thriving in the moment, throwing shit on presidential homes beneath the Paris skies. So if you feel like you're just powerless, I guess you bought the lie. But I can tell they're petrified of our collective might, 'cause I can hear those gentrifiers weeping at the sight of our collective rights. And I only can imagine the intensifying fear of knowing revolution's near, and all that's left to do is simply wallow in the thick anticipation of a rabid bite. And baby, one day you can ask your leaders just what that was like before you grab a slice. So if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. Honey, if you think you're powerless, allow me now to change your mind. See, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, and tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't. You see, they'll pay you hourly, tax them each apart, and make you build a shining tower out of loopholes and cards, where they'll tell you that you're powerless to keep you in the dark, because you aren't, because we aren't.
Legend says that Hercules swept Cerberus right off his feet and effortlessly set him down softly as a songbird. Atlas kept the world upon his back and every day wondered whether he could stand it any longer. And Reade came out to say the man they tried to label the Messiah of morality was really just another rapist. And I don't intend to hesitate when asked who was the stronger. Tara, like Assange, knew that carrying the truth would be the hardest labor. Tara knew that her assailant wasn't gonna make us any safer, and knew he's just the type of man to hand a decent foreign leader US printed walking papers, and knew he'd be relentless and aggressive in the war he'd wage upon her very character, that his attempts to weaken and degrade and embarrass her would be her only compensation. But I strongly doubt that anyone could ever have foreseen the stream of hate that came from quote-unquote progressives and the self-styled titans of survivor advocation. So if you really think there's something to be gained out of sharing your pain with the world, you are sorely mistaken. The Biden team just dragged their feet addressing Tara's allegations. Until they had a decent list of smears, then they aired them out on every station. And it turns out no one wants to hear the truth of who they praised as being worthy of such bloated liberal celebration. That no one wants to really know the person they've so valiantly defended, even when it meant they had to gloat and shit all over someone braver than they'd be if given the occasion. Now cue the faceless comment squad invasion. Cue those fuckers crawling out the woodwork to come analyze the way you wore your hair and what you wear. Like your appearance waives your rights, or that somehow you're the reason for your situation. Somehow they've decided you should bear responsibility for what such monstrous men insist on doing. Somehow they're deluded by the empty, hypocritical, and useless fucking platitudes that bastard keeps on spewing. And I think it's very telling that the best of their excuses when they try to come and justify our president's abuses is a hearty butt Trump. In which case I'll remind you that you never saw the news attempt to sell us Donald Trump like he was morally upstanding or a decent human. But when Joe says something bigoted or ogles someone's little kid, CNN says, isn't this refreshing? Biden's like a mix of JFK and FDR with all the finer parts of Harry Truman. Christ, I know that they don't think that we're the brightest, but at least pretend we got a couple lumens. Ask yourself if you have ever questioned what they fed you, or do you just shut your eyes and then consume it? And now ask yourself if you ate every one of Biden's lies under guise of harm reduction and the promise of a slight improvement. And now imagine long ago that Biden chose to show you who he really was by traumatizing you for his amusement. Now imagine that you watched him touch a Bible with those filthy hands, and then assume the power of the highest seat in all the land, of knowing your attacker wields a global coalition born of three-letter agencies who'll make a life's mission out of trying to discredit you through lies, damn lies, and collusion. Big tech is never gonna separate from our surveillance state. Fuck's sakes, they're just a breath away from total fusion. So there will come a time where even if you see the light, your voice will never reach the sky through all the bots and all the noise pollution. So trust us when we tell you that the masking of abuses is perhaps this country's oldest institution. And I know nothing nobler than facing it in honor of the truth when you know that the people holding power have been neutralizing truth since there was wet ink on the Constitution. So know that Tara's truth is something crucial to the movement. And if you see yourself a partner to the revolution, help this country see through all the baseless propaganda through the crux of Joe's illusions. And recognize that Tara Reade gave everything she had so she could tell us what the truth is. Recognize the decent thing to do when someone bears their soul and shows their bruises is not to ask for context or offer up your own solutions. Your job is just to listen with an honest mind and put yourself on Tara's side a moment so you understand the path she chooses. That there is no instant fame worth the dragging of your name. And if that's what you think, you've a lot to learn about the kind of facts the mob can handle and the kind that it refuses.
Welcome, everyone. It's the Politics of Survival. I'm your host, Tara Reade, and I have a really fun guest tonight who can tell us all about the Center of Political Innovation and how she gave Caleb Maupin a hard time all the way up until finally joining, and now she's part of CPI. And I was lucky enough and honored enough to get an award from them recently at the concert and had so much fun, and it was great. And Lily was responsible for organizing so much that went into this conference, and we had a huge turnout and lots of publicity. In fact, it even made Newsweek. So without further ado, I want to introduce the amazing Lily Goldklang. Lily, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Tara.
Yeah,
so good to talk with you again. It's been a little bit, but yeah. How are you doing?
And now we can talk smack about Caleb, right? Just kidding. I think enough people online do that, right? Like page.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to fill the quota for at least a couple years. You know?
Right. Yeah. We'll leave him be for now. So I have, you have had so much go on in the last year that's been really, really fascinating. Besides 2 conferences, you also traveled to Nicaragua. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I've been to Nicaragua about I would say 3 times at this point, and
Wow.
on behalf of the Center for Political Innovation, leading on delegations with Caleb and other people from CPI, and when they couldn't come, I guess I've kind of like spearheaded my own delegation from CPI there. But yeah, it's been really awesome going to Nicaragua, which for those who don't know, it's a socialist country. The government empower the Sandinistas. They adhere to Christian socialism, and they are anti-imperialists. And they were actually the same people that the U.S. government under Reagan was funding the death squads against in the 1980s.
Oh,
And
wow.
being there is it's kind of like, we know the media lies here, right? We all know, media lies, Tara. I mean, you've experienced it firsthand.
Yep.
We all know the media lies, but being on the ground in one of these countries, Nicaragua, Venezuela, Cuba, China, Russia, it is kind of like a refutation of the lies with your eyes. You know what I mean? Like we're reading about it, and we're reading the alternate sources and alternative media to try to figure out what's actually going on. But there you're actually seeing what's going on. And it's like the exact opposite of what New York Times was saying.
Exactly. Yeah. And most things are the exact opposite of what New York Times would say. I would put that in. But we were joking right at the front about Caleb Maupin, but he really is amazing. He founded the CPI, the Center for Political Innovation, and it's really taken off. And what is your role with CPI?
So I am this is so more informal. I've been basically head coordinator of kind of the last 2 events, the retreat in Kansas where we had classes. Actually, my class I just finally finished uploading from that. Internet back here it's incredibly slow, so it took like 3 or 4 days, but it's up. But yeah, so we had a retreat in Kansas with education, singing, great food, and then we just had a conference in Chicago where Tara was there, and as well as members of the Uhuru movement who've been raided by the FBI. But my role and my title in CPI right now is international liaison, because I have, as the organization has existed, I have kind of done a lot of the international networking, with the Sandinistas, talking in Nicaragua, talking to people in Venezuela with the Alex Saab case. For those who don't know, again, Alex Saab, Venezuelan diplomat who was illegally kidnapped by the United States for basically violating their sanctions off their soil, right? So,
wow.
But
he was bringing humanitarian aid. Is that correct?
Yes. He was bringing, he was going to Iran, from Venezuela to Iran, to get aid that Venezuela is not able to get because of the sanctions. And Iran is very sympathetic with Venezuela because they're kind of in a similar, situation with sanctions. And so basically the United States picked him up as he was refueling in Cabo Verde. It's a little island off the west of the coast of Africa. And basically they're sending the message that if if countries that they sanction, that they try to lock out of the international financial system, if those countries try to go around it and do bilateral cooperation, America's saying, we're going to take you out. And that's really dangerous, because when, this kind of diplomacy, peaceful trade and cooperation, when that breaks down, I mean, that's how wars start.
Right.
If America, won't allow these countries that America sanctions unilaterally without international approval. If it allows, basically saying those countries have to follow the United States law, unilateral law, off the U.S. soil, it sets a dangerous precedent. As there have been movements in America and Canada, Venezuela, all across the world demanding Alex Saab's freedom, and I've been a part of that for the Center for Political Innovation.
Well, you have quite a background in, and if you want to get a sip of water, because it sounds like you have a bit of a cold, I know you mentioned to me right before you come on, go ahead. Because I wanted you to get into this. What really fascinated me with both your speech and then talking with you at the conference in Chicago is how you got started in politics and how young you were. And you're still very young, by the way. You don't have to say your age unless you want to, but you're very well versed in geopolitics for someone of, you know, your age, and you started young. So can you talk a little bit about what got you in, and Bernie Sanders, and then what led you to Caleb?
Sure. Well, let's see, where did I start? I guess I started being political when I was 12 years old. Right now I'm 19. I'll just go ahead and say, yeah, I'm 19 years old, but at the age of 12, I believe it was 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, so when I tell a story, I jump all over the place and
It's
I'm
okay.
terrible at it. But when I was 8, I had AML leukemia, which is a form of blood cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, obviously when you have something like that, the medical bills are pretty high. I mean, I'm lucky to have, you know, made it through, but then once you get to that point, there's the medical bills, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so my family, we were lucky, we were able to kind of pay the medical bills. But you know, it was in my head, I was like, well, you know, so we could get through that, right? But if someone else had, you know, in slightly less fortunate economic conditions, you know, if someone else had this exact same thing and I had, and they made it through, you know, their family's probably going to go bankrupt. Their family's probably gonna, you know, be destitute, or at the very least struggle financially with those medical bills.
Right.
And, you know, I was like, why is no one talking? Like, why is this is so, you know, it was ignored. This is kind of waking up to the media. It does not actually focus on the issues that affect Americans. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I heard about Bernie Sanders, and I heard he was talking about Medicare for all, you know, free single payer healthcare like they have, you know, I was just like, well, why America is the greatest country in the world, right? That's what we're always told. So it's like, well, these other countries who are supposedly less great than us have better healthcare. So why can't we do it?
Right.
But you know, I started to notice there's some weaknesses with Bernie, as we saw, especially in 2020.
Right.
But basically how he was willing to let the Democrats kind of walk all over him as long as the right wing doesn't win or something.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I stayed, even after he lost to Hillary, I was like, well, you know, AOC, maybe we can get more progressives in the Democratic Party and like take it over from the inside, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I really kind of did believe in that.
Yeah.
Until maybe started maybe 2018, 2019. And I was like, well, you know, why are they like just bowing to Nancy Pelosi? Why are they, and then 2020, why is Bernie, you know, bowing to Biden? I remember I was in high school at the time, actually, and I had heard you, you know, come out and say what had happened to you and what Joe Biden did to you. And I was trying to tell people, I was like, have you guys heard about this? Maybe Joe Biden like isn't like the guy who's going to save the country. And everyone's like, well, no, that can't be true. I mean, you know, Russia wants Biden to lose or something. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
all right. And when Bernie never brought it up, he just every time Biden, he's my good friend. And I was like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? Are these people actually opposed to the political status quo? Or are they just kind of like an actor in a part of in like the play of it or something?
Right.
So I was on the internet a lot and kind of looking at different ideas, you know, like anarchism, social, whatever. And I found this guy, Caleb Maupin, talking about communism, talking about socialism, and talking about the history, really getting into the history of the Soviet Union, China, and now Venezuela, and what's going on all over the world. And I'd never heard anyone kind of talk about it that concretely. I'd always heard people just talk about, you know, this ideal, or, well, we should do this or something. And I was like, never like what actually happened.
Theory, more political theory stuff.
Yeah. And the theory, but it's like most of these people, you know, weren't willing to kind of, you know, defend the history, because on some level you have to defend the history. So, you know, Caleb Maupin, and I started learning more about him. I started watching his live streams a lot, especially during the lockdown, you know, the original 2020 lockdown. I didn't have any responsibilities at that point because I was still in high school, like just barely, but
yeah.
So I was watching him a lot, and I reached out to him because I liked the message, and he said that they were putting out the Green Book by Muammar Gaddafi.
Right.
And I had known that Muammar Gaddafi, you know, I don't know if he was a good guy or whatever, but I knew, things got worse after he was gone. I was too young to remember, but I knew that things had gotten worse after Gaddafi was out.
You mean in Libya?
Yeah, in Libya, I'm sorry. Yeah, in Libya.
Mm-hmm.
And that, maybe this is worth looking into. What did he actually say?
Mm-hmm.
And I looked into it, and I read the book. And, there's some things that might seem a bit out there, eccentric, or, don't agree with. But, it's the mainstream media was not telling the truth about him. It's not this like, we got to oppress the people. We have to, you know what I mean? He's basically talking about how to bring the people more into the government.
Well, yeah, he was framed by the US media as a murderous dictator.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
That wasn't the case.
No, it wasn't. I mean, even if you look at, obviously his political manifesto, the Green Book, of his vision of a transformation of Libya.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, words aren't everything. It's about actions. But on some level, if all he was just this brutal dictator that, just kill his people for no reason, I don't think he would have written a book like that, talking about how can we make a true democracy, unlike the American democracy, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I tried selling the Green Book, because as a Center for Political Innovation, trying to get the message out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know if I had the best of luck, but it was a good experience learning to go talk to people,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of learn how to interact with people on politically.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's also a good experience you get from volunteering for candidates like me with Bernie Sanders. You have to learn how to frame these political issues, take these political issues and frame them in a way that people understand. You know what I mean?
Or that they can digest, like if they're busy with their lives, because most people are just trying to survive and busy, and they compartmentalize that kind of portion of voting and politics and stuff. Most people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Most people, politics is, well, every 4 years there's the two guys, and which one do I like the most? But
yeah. Or the lesser of two evils.
Oh yeah, which one do I hate the least? And so from there I was kind of, just in back home. But I kind of, I've always just kind of had this thing where I want to do something. You know what I mean? I don't want to just sit around and know all this stuff. I want to put it into action somehow. So I keep kind of talking to Caleb, and there are, I don't know how online a lot of people here are, but for a lot of the stuff online about Caleb is just not true. Caleb Maupin, he's been called, firstly, let me just say you can go find articles back in 2010 in his local Cleveland newspaper. It's called, I think, The Communists Next Door, and you see Caleb with his long hair, and he's it's talking about how he was engaged in anti-racist activism in 2010. This is before Black Lives Matter, before all that. And, he got one of two high schoolers, African-American high school girls, acquitted from, basically there was the teacher layoffs and the students were trying to go out to protest, but the cops locked the kids in the school to stop the protest.
Wow.
The only two to get out there were these two African-American girls, and the police, physically assaulted them and then tried to charge them with aggravated assault, I believe.
Wow.
Or tried to charge them with resisting arrest, or,
Yeah.
how it is. But Caleb recorded it and got one of them acquitted for the charges.
Wow.
So, but on the internet, he's called, so secretly he's a right winger, he's a Nazi, he's a racist, a homophobe, and it really doesn't make sense if you know him, because
Right.
So all of those, he's not a racist. I think I can say that he's not homophobic, bigoted. And it's just so sad because all these people have this kind of, devilish image of him, right? Of Caleb. If you really get to know him, he's just kind of a sweet, sweet nerd. I don't know how to.
A sweet nerd. Well, I think, I haven't met his wife yet, but I met him, in Chicago in person. Then, obviously had a lot of conversations with him.
Yeah,
because we both work for RT, but he he reminds me of a professor because of his knowledge of history, his depth of knowledge, and he has definitely outread me. Like, I mean, I read a lot, and I read a lot. But he can, yeah. So I almost kind of feel competitive sometimes with the reading history part, but yeah, we should play trivia sometime online, historical trivia. But
Yeah, you and I could team up, because then we might have a chance.
Yeah, then we might have a chance. But yeah, what I was really struck by was the commitment of all the people, including yourself, to this Center for Political Innovation, and the fact that he just created it because there was just this vacuum, and no one. And I know it's described. Am I correct in saying it's a think tank? How would you officially describe it, since you are the international liaison?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is a think tank. It's specifically a think tank because, you know, Caleb's seen, and I'm sure a bunch of people have seen, kind of how, you know, whenever there's a communist who wants to, they see something's wrong with the political landscape, they want to start their own organization, start a new organization. Typically, they go to forming a party, like the Vanguard Party, you know, the Communist Party,
right?
The Progressive Labor Party, or the, you know, the whatever party is. And the line of that party is, if they are a communist, openly communist party, is that we are the one true party. We are the only party that can bring the revolution, that can save the country or save the world. But, you know, we kind of saw, Caleb saw, CPI saw that a lot of the ways that political ideas are inserted into the political landscape today is not through parties, but it's through think tanks. Like, for instance, the Republicans, they have the Heritage Foundation, the I think Cato, that might be the Republican, that's libertarian, but I'm not sure if it's, you know, but obviously there's no political affiliations, but essentially everyone kind of understands.
Yeah, the Atlantic Council is everybody knows that's the, you know, the neolibs. Yeah, I was going to say something else, but yeah.
Oh, you no, go on. You have something else?
Yeah, you know. But because I don't want to be derogatory, but it's just that neoliberal kind of nonsense that's led us to this point of, you know, it's the wolf in sheep's clothing. And I kept saying that about Biden and then the Democratic Party itself. But it definitely, whereas like the Republicans, they're just wolves. Like, you know what you get. Like, what you get is what you get. But like the danger with Democrats is that, you know, you've got those Atlantic councils, and those councils, like you're saying, feeding how to frame and how to kind of provide, you know, conflict with social issues to distract from what's really happening.
Yeah,
I think it's very pointed. So it's good that you're part of a good think tank that's trying to talk about workers' rights, right?
Yeah, exactly. And kind of insert, you know, communist, socialist ideas and principles, ideology, and views into the political discourse, get people to engage with it, but without the kind of illusion that we are the saviors and we're gonna, you know, we're gonna have our way with the government and make everything perfect. But, you know, it's kind of
yeah. And one thing that I heard in your discussions with Caleb, and we were all kind of discussing was, and, you know, this kind of went back to the show I had last night with your group, was that they talked about what they're doing is economic development and lifting up and doing programs like the doula program, like the farmers market, like the economic development of their communities that are impoverished, and trying to keep the money there to develop it. And so a lot of those same concepts is what you and Caleb were talking about with CPI, you know, that, yeah, revolution is a great idea, but like it's a vacuum if there's nothing to go to, right? Like, you need to build community.
Yeah, that's exactly what we talk about. We talk about building communities of solidarity, in the sense of, you know, it's not enough to just have people who agree with you politically, right? That's good. But if you look at mass political organizations and how they functioned, if you look at the Communist Party in the 1930s, you look at the Chinese communists when they were in the Civil War fighting in the mountains, they really did build these kind of communities of solidarity where, you know, people were taken care of. It wasn't just political. It was, you know, the political group had a soup kitchen, or had a had housing or had all these different things. And the sense of that, if you're a part of us, it's more than just a political kind of alignment. And it's, kind of, you are, really building a real community with these people.
Yeah, I mean, I really
That's a
felt
goal.
it. I felt the solidarity when I was there, when I gave my speech. It was very moving. I really enjoyed you and all the people that were there. And it's the first time actually that I've been in a public event where I had that much warmth directed towards me, because I've had to come through, like, I was at the Medicare for All and give a speech. It was very hostile. Some people were nice, but the Justice Democrats had infiltrated, and they made it ugly, and they made it divisive, and they made it not go well. And the Justice Democrats hire troll farms and they go after citizens. They're not, it's evil what they're doing, what the Democratic Party leadership is doing. It's evil.
And they do so many people every year.
Yeah, and they're hurting people and causing problems and causing chaos, and they're not creating unity. They're not creating a cohesive, coherent message. So I think what attracted me, what I really liked about the conference and the people, was just there's a coherent message. There's some goals. There's things that, and they're peaceful goals. They're community goals. They're solidarity goals. They're not about, tearing things down. It's about building things up. Yeah. And, I think all of us are sick and tired of hearing about tearing things down. We want to hear about how do we build it up, because the elites are masterful at tearing us down and tearing our country down and bringing us to the brink of nuclear war. So how can we build up? And I want to give a small example. Indy, who's helping me tonight with the engineering, he created INN because all these separate content creators were struggling and getting deplatformed and getting demonetized and getting suppressed. And so he created Independent News Network, where there's like a group of us. We all have different views. We all have different shows. We all, can argue about certain political points, but there's a cohesive community. Like if somebody's, having a personal thing or there's something going on, we all are there for each other, and it's really nice. And so shout out to Indy and Reeve, who do work hard. And that's another way of building community. But back to you. So I wanted to ask you, this evolution that you had. You said at first you kind of challenged Caleb. I heard you say that in your speech, and you've talked about that before. So
we just had Tara freeze. This is Indy. Hi everybody. Hopefully you can hear my voice. I'm the disembodied voice that's coming through on our stream. I'm going to zoom on to Lily. Hi, everybody. Lily, it's now the Lily show, everybody. Hi, Lily. Lily, give a good commercial for CPI, and hopefully Tara will come back. I'm guessing that her internet probably got hit by lightning, maybe on stream. Talk a little bit about the Chicago event. The inspiration. I co-host a show with Jesse Jett. And he could not stop raving. Oh boy, now we got our single box. Now Lily's really okay. Where's our single? I don't have a single for this, do I? Of course not. I'm gonna go to a different shot here. Let's go to our INN single, and I know that'll work. No, that's our wrong.
Exclusive.
Okay. See that? We're having fun. We are having fun. Come on, go back. Now Lily's split across 2 boxes, 3 boxes, names. Oh boy, this is a lot of fun. Let's go to we're gonna go to a technical difficulties screen right now. I will go back to a screen. We will be back momentarily, everyone. Thank you.
and monopoly and finance capital that Lenin talked about. And our American government is functioning to facilitate and maintain this imperialism. They're trying. They really are trying to get us into a third world war that will kill millions, all so they can stay on top. I, for one, am sick and tired of it. When I see China moving to reunify with their brothers and sisters in Taiwan, and our leaders tell us we need to go fight, tell them, I will fight, but not against China.
That's right.
And when I see Russia having no other choice but to move in and protect the peoples of eastern Ukraine who've been living under a fascistic regime of terror since 2014, and our leaders tell us we need to go fight, tell them, I will fight, but not against Russia.
Woo! That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right.
And when the people in this country and all over the world rise up and they say they're sick and tired of this rotten system that's destroying their lives, and our leaders tell us we need to go fight to keep them afloat, go ahead and tell them at the top of your lungs, I will fight. I will fight against their wars. I will fight against their poverty, their destitution, their depravity. I will fight. And that's what really needs to be made clear to them. That if they keep pushing and pushing the people to accept worse and worse conditions, then not just me, not just us, but millions of people right here and across the globe will join hands together and say, I will fight! Woo! Introduce Caleb Moffat. Caleb has been a communist organizer and activist for the past 16 years. In 2010 in Cleveland, Ohio, students walked out of Collingwood High School to protest teacher layoffs. The police responded by violently arresting Destiny and Deasia Bruno. Luckily, Caleb was...
Okay. So hi everybody. I'm having a little tech difficulty with internet. I don't really know what's going on, but my Zoom won't, it just kind of dropped me and won't have me back. We must have been talking about some spicy stuff, Lily.
Yeah, I think someone maybe a little up high might not be happy. Okay.
So we were just playing your speech for everyone because I just wanted to say I thought your speech was so moving and so powerful. And of course, I got a standing ovation. Yeah. So how did that feel? How did you feel about your speech? And can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, the speech really, even though I was the one giving it, it was electrifying, right? It was, I had been kind of, stressing about that particularly for maybe a week or two on end. And, I was like, I have to give the speech right before Caleb, introduce Caleb. I need to get people hyped up, right?
Right.
And, I thought I was giving a good job, but it was really moving to me afterwards to see there were people who were like, one person was almost in tears and people were very, very moved by it. And I got, the speech was more moving than I'd even thought. So maybe I should expect more of myself. But I don't know, that speech, it was just really kind of, saying what needed to be said, that basically our leaders, if they think the American people are going to go fight for their wars, they've got another thing coming, I feel like,
Yeah.
because, you know, the American people are tired. A lot of people might get, you know, manipulated by the media and propaganda to supporting Ukraine or supporting Taiwan or whatever. But at the end of the day, I don't think the American people want to go die and want to go kill other people just to, you know, not even for their gain, for our elite's gain. And that was kind of the point.
And then let's just talk about that leading up to it, because you talked a little bit in your speech, and we've talked too about Russophobia. You know, what do you know, a young person coming up and seeing all the hatred towards another country that really we don't, you know, I mean, I just don't understand it, the Russophobia. And I can talk about, and I have talked about how I feel about it, but how do you feel about the Russophobia and your friends and your, you know, in your community?
Mm-hmm. Well, for me, I guess it wasn't like I didn't feel it on a personal level, in the sense of, so I'm not Russian and I don't really have any Russian friends, but I did just feel how stupid it was, kind of like, you know, and how it seemed like half the country was like, well, of course, right, you know, Hillary Clinton loses to Donald Trump, and there were a lot of people, you know, having really good analysis on why it happened. And then Hillary Clinton's defense, the Democrats' defense, is Russia, you know,
Right.
sorry, the you know, the leaked emails from the DNC in 2016, they would never deny what the contents of those emails. The DNC, Donna Brazil, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, none of them would ever deny the contents of those emails, but they would say, when asked about it, they say, oh, that's from Russia. So okay, so even if Russia did it, which I don't think they did, you're saying, yes, those emails are true, but because Russia exposed the truth, we can't talk about the truth, right? And it was just, I you know, it kind of pushed me into a position where, you know, I was defensive, right? Because, you know, my who I thought was my guy, Bernie Sanders, he was, you know, called the Russia stuff, even though he did the Russia gating, but he was called a Russian plant. And it was just kind of, you know, I looked into it. I was like, well, I heard Jimmy Dore say, oh, well, Russia has free healthcare. I was like, wait, is that true? And I thought they're this hellhole or something. And I looked it up and I was like, wait, that's true. They have free, like, higher education. It's like, and that they're beating America, but somehow they're the enemy, even though America,
and
like,
you know what? I want to add to that. You know what else they have? They have a parental leave. They have, when you, and it's quite lengthy, and it's paid so that you can be your baby, you know, when you have a baby, and you can be with your child and stuff. And they have education and they have help with preschool, and Vladimir Putin, because they had a surplus, as you know, from the sanctions, they're doing fine. And the ruble is one of the strongest currencies in the world. So he announced with some of their surplus, what they're doing, he upped their benefits, right? And upped pensions, you know. And what did our country do?
Yeah, imagine if our country had a surplus. What do we do?
It would go to the defense industry.
Yeah,
more
wouldn't even
war.
Go to the defense, or they just hoard it and say,
a bunch of pantsuits for Nancy Pelosi, I guess.
Or they just hoard it and say, oh, the debt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Oh, the debt, we can't do anything. Yeah, no, it looks like, you know, Russia was obviously devastated by the collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1990s, and they're still in many ways recovering from that. But if you look at kind of the orientation of the government towards the people, I think it is, you know, maybe the life is tougher for a lot of people there, but the orientation of which direction is this country going, which direction is the political leadership moving in, a pro-people direction or pro kind of, you know, oligarchy, pro NATO, globalism, or whatever, and pro-imperialism. I think it is moving in a pro-people direction. I think that's overall with Russia. But, you know, the point isn't about, in the whole Russiagate thing, the point isn't to say, oh, Russia is, you know, heaven on earth or whatever, right? Russia's not the saint or something. But the point is that, you know, they're being used as a political tool at one political party against the other. There's some overlap in Republicans who are believe in it, but overall it's the Democrats use it against the Republicans. And it's just not true. And it's covering up for the Democrats' real political failures, and it will be their continuing political failures, I think, in the future. They still haven't admitted, even with all the stuff, the witch hunt during the Trump administration, all the stuff that they didn't find anything with Russia. They said, oh, well, this person might have done blah, blah, but it was always, oh, this is going to come out. Mueller's about to drop this huge bomb and everything's going to come tumbling down. We heard that for 4 years.
Yeah.
And the Democrats, they still won't admit that it wasn't Russia that cost Hillary the election. When she was asked about it, I think she was like, oh, of course I take responsibility, but Russia.
I know. And it was because she didn't go to Wisconsin. I lived in Wisconsin. She should have gone. And it was because, let's just go deeper. People didn't want her. They just didn't. Too much. There's a lot of corruptions around the Clintons, and a lot of it was coming out, and including Bill Clinton. And that's even before the Epstein thing really dropped the way it has now. And now all that, history, and it's right. It's gross. It's disgusting.
Yeah. Clinton and Trump, everybody's.
So I wanted to ask Indy, while you're online there, are you there? You have to unmute yourself.
Yes, Indy's here. Hi, everybody. Indy's a disembodied voice.
You got any super chats or anything like that?
Super chats, super raise, no, but we have a bunch of chats, of course. There's a ton of people in the... Yipper says that I sounded like a guy with kids with how I reacted to this tech issue. Yeah, I do have kids. That's pretty funny. Yeah. Thank you, John. Everybody's reading my how I reacted. You'll see later, Tara. But I did tell people that we had some technical difficulties, and likely it was Tara's internet, and I was triaging and tried to put on a different box, and then of course Lily's box had a different screen, and you saw Rob for a second. So Rob made an appearance on the Politics of Survival tonight, briefly. Yep, and look, this is we do it live, folks.
Welcome to the playground. Now I still don't know what's on with my internet. That was but it was right when I was complimenting INN. It's weird, and I thought when I went out, I thought, did Indy unplug me? And then I was it was just funny. Anyway,
it's very funny.
Okay, so what comments do you have any questions or comments for Lily?
I'm looking through. Everybody's talking about computers, and okay, we talk more about Russia than the Russians do. That's John Kemper, hilarious.
That's so funny.
All right, I'm curious, what was your reaction to the whole Russiagate thing? If you don't mind me asking.
Mine, well, that was one of the reasons why, however small my platform is, I wanted to push back on Russophobia. I have very strong feelings about it. I don't like xenophobia, and I even used my quote in Newsweek, surprisingly, but I said that flat out, that Russia's not our enemy, neither is China. And I think I just think we need more collectively as a country, we need more emotional intelligence. And we're being led down this path of destruction by the elites that just want war. And they're creating, like you said, they're creating a convenient enemy. And, I think I was really appalled so much by the hate speech that was being allowed on Facebook and Instagram that they actually said they would allow people to talk about killing Russians. I was so deeply, it seared my soul. Like, I just didn't like it. It was so ugly. And I deleted my accounts, and I haven't been back since. So that's how strongly I felt. And, it's not because I'm Russian or anything. It's because it has to do with, my cousin's Russian or whatever, but it has to do with more than that. It's not about nationality. It would be anyone that was treated like that. Like, I have the same strong feelings about Afghanistan and about the way we, went in and destroyed that country, and about Libya, the way we destroyed that country, and Syria. And oh my gosh, I could spend the whole podcast listing the countries, right, that we've basically gone in and just destroyed their infrastructure and vilified. And frankly, I got in trouble when I came forward about Joe Biden, because I had written some things about Vladimir Putin that were positive, because he's a good leader. I'm sorry, but he is. And the elites don't want to hear that. And it makes them really angry and I always get trolled. But his people, he has like an 80%, 90% approval rate. He's doing well for his people. He is interested in leading his people. And like today he gave a speech that called out the elites again and said that they're trying to distract Americans from their economic woes. And he's right, you know, and I don't know. So I feel pretty strongly that there's a different way that America can go. And the way that we've been drawn into almost the brink of nuclear war with Russia and China. And I think by the grace of their patience, we're not in a hot war because we're just really trying to provoke it. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah. No, yeah, that was, oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to say that We Need Critical Thinking's asking, Lily, what things work for you in changing some people's minds in real life? And thank you for your work.
Well, thank you so much. I guess kind of a big thing, and I think it's overlooked a lot, is listen to the person. Listen to what they're actually saying. Don't, you know, listen to what they're actually saying and what they mean by it. Don't listen to them and, you know, kind of think, well, what they say this, they say they want this, that means they align this way politically, which means I have to, you know what I mean? Kind of listen to what people want. And if, you know, if it is about, for instance, I don't like communism because I want to be able to go out and start my own business or something. So if it is kind of a lie that's been spread about communism, you can kind of say, well, look, you know, I want you to be able to go out and start your own business. And the Communist Party of China wants you to be able to go out and start your own business. Because if you look at becoming a business owner, a small business owner, I'd say in a lot of ways getting going, it's easier in China than it is in the United States at this point, because our small business, our mom and pop people are getting screwed over by the big corporations here. Whereas in China, sure, they do crack down on the big corporations. They have regulations. But in that sense, at the lower level, there's less red tape. And basically listen to people and hear what they're saying, think like, you know, where are they coming from as another human being? I think it's really important to not get into kind of, well, you know, this person's right wing, this person's left wing, they're a liberal conservative. That means they're a good person, bad person. I think I kind of operate on the assumption most people, maybe it's naive, but most people are good. And in that sense, you know, this is something I've kind of struggled with, you know, getting over. A lot of, you know, family members might have some political views that you find abhorrent. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to be like, well, you know, they're still people, they're still human beings, and they're still your family in that sense. Yeah. So kind of listen to people on a human level. I guess that'd be the biggest advice. Yeah.
And John McCarthy's asking you, Lily, to speak about the Day of Action, and would like to hear you speak about that.
Oh, the Day of Action. Sorry. The Day of Action. Right. So August 27th, that's 11 days from now. That's a Saturday. The Center for Political Innovation is, sorry, I was looking at the chat, got distracted. The Center for Political Innovation is hosting a national day of action to reopen the peace talks with North Korea and for the peaceful reunification of the Korean Peninsula. Because we're seeing, you know, while Taiwan is obviously, that situation is escalating by our elites. Our elites are doing the exact same thing on the Korean Peninsula. There's just been a new president elected in South Korea who is, before they had Moon Jae-in, who was more of a liberal and more kind of a progressive. I don't know if liberal is in the South Korean context. I don't know if that works, but more of a liberal progressive who wanted to negotiate with the North and have peaceful, you know, improve relations. Now the president is very hostile. And so we are trying to basically demand that while, you know, we saw Trump go to North Korea to try to negotiate. And in my view, I think he was sabotaged by neocons like John Bolton, et cetera. And we were basically saying, you know, reopen the peace talks. That was the one good thing Trump did. And, you know, reopen the peace talks and let's get a negotiated peace. Let's get North Korea and South Korea to, finally, bury the hatchet, so to speak. But the North Korea can keep their socialist system, and South Korea can keep their market system, but essentially kind of a one country, two systems unification. But the goal is that it would be good for America.
Why would it be good for America? Why do Americans care? That's what I want to ask. Like, that's what Americans would ask you, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. It would actually be good for America because, well, one, we're not going to have a nuclear war with North Korea. And two, this is a big one that a lot of people don't talk about. North Korea, when they, open up not economically, in a sense, where the sanctions are lifted and other countries can start doing trade with them, that is an economic boom waiting to happen. And America can get in on it. China can get in on it. Russia can get in on it. It's an economic boom waiting to happen. North Korean population is highly educated in, technology. They speak different languages. Most of the population speaks more than one language. And because of this, they would be, if a peace was negotiated, it would be very good for, American, if someone wants to do a startup, work with North Korea, they could make some money doing that. Russia and China, it's the next economic miracle waiting to happen. And if America does not help it happen, then America's not going to be included in the party, I guess.
Okay. Now, so that's the day of action. When is that again?
August 27th.
And how do people?
I know we have. Sure.
So
I believe you can contact, I think, find, if you want to reach out to CPI, I believe it's solidarity at cpiusa.org. And if you want to reach out to me about possibly, coordinating, seeing if there's a group of people who are doing something for that in your area, my email is goldklanglily, GOLDKLANG, Lily, LILY @gmail.com. GOLDKLANG, Lily, LILY @gmail.com.
Okay, and then in the chat too, I mean, in the stream, we have some of your links to CPI. So if the audience members want to know. So, but I know people are caring about geopolitical issues, but right now there's things going on domestically. So I know CPI does a lot of things with problems that we're having here in the United States. So what are some things that are coming up, or what are some action items that CPI is trying to work on right now?
Well, right now, sorry.
That's okay.
Right now,
take a drink of water. There you go.
Right now, we're focusing, kind of looking ahead to the day of action, August 27th. But aside from that, we have, these are not set dates, but we have policy proposals for domestically here in the United States that we want to push. For instance, there is, a global food crisis exacerbated by the conflict in Russia and Ukraine, and people, pretty soon there's going to be a mass, there already is a mass hunger problem in Africa and other places, but it's going to spread.
Well, here too, 45% of American citizens are food insecure right now.
Right.
Yeah.
In the sense of, well, not only will it be people can't afford food, at a certain point, I'm saying it's going to start being, there is none.
Yeah.
Which, we're already seeing the food shortages. And CPI has a proposal essentially to build, we call it the river of life. We want to build a mass irrigation system, especially across the, heartland of the country, the Midwest, all the farming states, right? The heartland. And like Gaddafi did in Libya, Gaddafi built what they called the Great Man-Made River, a mass irrigation project across the whole country. And we want to do something like that here in America to prevent the food crisis from getting worse, to prevent a famine, and essentially to, cultivate our land and cultivate crops so we can feed our people and feed the world. That is one thing. River of Life. We have another policy proposal there's the crisis of mass migration. You have, right, you know, people dying trying to get to the border, and then when they come in, they're, you know, they have a lot of cases they're terrorized. So we have a proposal called the Sandino Zapata Economic Corridor. And Sandino is the national hero of Nicaragua. The Sandinistas are named after him. Zapata is a national hero of Mexico, leader of the Mexican Revolution. And we want to basically build kind of like how China has the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, where it's a specific coordinated zone of economic development. We want to do that throughout Central America, you know, from Texas all the way down to Panama, and basically develop these countries, help develop these countries in a way that people will not feel the need to flee their home country. Because, you know, a lot of times when they're fleeing, they're facing violence, death, and destruction, and, you know, facing more on the way here. And, you know, we want to transcend the political binary, the political divide, which in many ways is artificial in the United States, where the quote unquote left position, the Democrats, is, oh, it's great that people are coming, you know, we need, you know, more people come in, diversity is great, which is, you know, sure, diversity is an asset and a strength to a people, but in the sense of, it's great people are fleeing their homes, it's great their families are being killed, and, you know, I don't think that's great, right? But then the Republicans, in some ways, they have the opposite kind of, they're both not solutions, saying, yay, this is great, not a solution. And the Republicans say, they're bad, they're all criminals, we have to, you know, lock them up, get them out of here. And those two things do not solve the problem. What really will solve the problem is what CPI is trying to do, trying to get past these artificial political binaries, is develop these countries. So one, people don't feel the need on those, at least on the scale we're seeing today, to flee their homes, right? And you know, obviously, then with less of a mass migration crisis, there will be less hysteria, and there'll be less, you know, terror and repression into the people who do come.
Well, good. Those sound like great policy ideas. And you know, Lily, I just want to take the minute to thank you again, and CPI and Caleb Maupin, for the wonderful award that you gave me, which is behind me actually on my bookshelf. And also just the wonderful things you're trying to do with the global community, trying to internationally and domestically. And I know throughout this podcast you've been having a cough and stuff like that, and I'm sorry, and I hope you feel better. I hope it's nothing serious, and you feel better there. But and also my little, I don't know, loss of connectivity for some reason, which I still is a mystery to me, what's going on with my, but thanks for your patience with all of that. And you know, for the audience members, if you have questions for Lily, she gave her email. You'll also be able to find it when you search. We'll be having the internet stream up with all its little flaws and bumps in the road. We will have this stream up and ready for you to look at on Rockfin, Rumble, and YouTube and Twitter and such. And a big shout out to Indy. Thank you for Indy for kind of getting us through the little bump in the road with my loss of connectivity there. I appreciate that. So any final thoughts, Lily, on ways if people are interested in CPI that they can catch up with you or catch up with CPI or Caleb Maupin?
Well, if you want to get in contact with CPI, I highly recommend, recommend going to cpiusa.org. That's our website.
Okay.
You can sign up, become a dues paying member, or if you just want to submit we have a contact form, you submit, you know, put in your information, put in a message, it'll get to us and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
But yeah, I would say, you know, become an actual member of CPI. That'll be great. We have our planning calls on Zoom every Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. Okay. And let's see what else is there. Yeah, you have put out my email. You know, Caleb Maupin's on Twitter, YouTube, and I'm also, if people want to check me out, I'm on Twitter as well.
And you know, and Caleb has mentioned he's going to have some more conferences coming up. So you have some more things coming up in the fall. Those are developing.
Yes,
And,
we
you
don't
know-
know about we don't know the fall. It might be the winter or the fall. We're not sure, but
Winter.
next stop, you know, put your markers on the Pacific Northwest. That's where we're headed.
Ooh, yeah. Well, that's I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. Well, listen, again, thank you very much for coming on, and your speech again was inspiring. Your life is inspiring, and you know, I'm glad that you were able to do what you have been able to do with going to Nicaragua and future travel. So I hope you make it to Venezuela, because that'll be fun. And to my audience members, thank you for tuning in. Sorry again for the little connectivity issue. I'm going to try to figure out what happened. I still don't really understand why I was dropped from the stream, but we'll figure it out. And we'll see you next time on the Politics of Survival. Next Monday night, I have Donald Portery, who is from RT International, and he'll be talking about stuff from Moscow. So that's coming up next week. All right, signing out, and there you have it. Thanks, everybody. Good night.